It helps if I have the microphone on. Hi. Goodness. Aw. I have not done this in ages, so I'm trying to get this all situated, so if it is not working, I apologize. Okay. Alright, there's that. There's that. Alright, I think I've got it. Actually, let me test. I should probably hear it myself. See if it's working. Alright, I think I've got it. Actually, let me test. I should probably hear it myself. See if it's working. I think I've got it. Actually, let me test. Exciting times here. Let's all right. Now I think about it, you probably heard all sorts of cacophonous nonsense going on with it. So, but howdy, hi. How's it going? If you've not been on here before, my name is Taylor. Hello. I do things. I've been doing things for a long time, like a lot of people. And this is one of the things I've done, which is a book that I need to get out. No. So I had to do a few printings of the book because I'll show what was going on with them. So me and my infinite wisdom, the very first printings of this, I think I used matte material, matte as it were, for those of us who don't know how to read things. And it came out like this, really, really dark, kind of cool in a way, but you can't read the thing very well. So that kind of was not so good. And then I went with the the glossy finish. I was like, well, maybe glossy and kind of lightening it up a little bit. Well, it did that. It's still very difficult to read. Rather unfortunate. Kind of cool in a way. I'm going to be using this one because I want to. And got such a mess. And then after 3 tries, finally got one that looks a little bit more in line with kind of what I was going for. It's still probably a little dark, but actually I like it like this. It is nice and even though it's not a scary story, it's nice and spooky. But yeah, that helps. I'm trying to navigate this. There we go. Look at that. Isn't that neat? Isn't that pretty? So, yeah. So that is what's going on. But I thought it would be a time and appropriate to actually do some readings of this. And truthfully, what I want to do is read through, kind of give some little thoughts on it and stuff. And I'll be like, oh, this is kind of what I was thinking when I was writing this and stuff like that. That night, I usually have a nice, calm Saturday morning ritual for myself. The work week for me has finished, so I get myself a giant thing of coffee that's not fully full, and I decided to go with 2 different biscottis. So I got gingerbread and turtle pecan. And get them. I was getting them at Big Lots because they were super cheap, but Big Lots is going out of business, so I will have to get them somewhere else. So they're just the noni, I don't know what they're just typical biscotti thing. Exciting, riveting stuff here, I know, but I was like, it's how I treat myself. And not to say that I don't treat myself in other ways, but that's my little calming down, decompress, which probably should be done Saturday or Friday nights, but I don't know. I feel like when I try to do that, like how you decompress. If you decompress by just going full throttle, are you really decompressing? Or are you just kind of pressing down the gas a little bit more? That's for other people to decide. For me, that's not really how I do things. So, but yeah, so I want to go through. There's bound to be some sort of errors that I missed because I did not have an editor or anything. This is just self-published, so it is just me, little old me, doing it until my eyeballs fall out of my head and I gotta plop them back in. And yeah, so I want to do that, kind of maybe point out things here and there, like how I don't have it, it's over there, but how I like to do things is write by hand. And this is probably what takes a long time. Write by hand and then do the type it out as kind of like an edit, going through and filling it out a little bit more, editing it as I go along, and then once I've done that, go through another pretty thorough edit, and then kind of just read through and hopefully catch hopefully catch any more mistakes on that last sweep by through, and then that's it. The end. I really, beyond that, that's all I got. Like I said, it's just me self-publishing it. I haven't really had much of an opportunity, or I don't even want to say it's an opportunity. I haven't really done anything to try to be like, oh yes, let's do a like send it out to anybody, like a manuscript or anything like that. So I probably should, but I don't, because I that's just a lot more work that I really don't know if I could try to finagle. Maybe it isn't as much work as I'm imagining it. I know I've been told otherwise, that it isn't as obnoxious as I'm making it out to be, but I don't know. Maybe that's just me getting in my own head, sort of thing. On that front, excuse me. So, yeah, that is what I got. That is what I got. I'm gonna just do this real quick. Okay, there we go. I don't have to keep on jumping back and forth on anything. All right. So, Saedra's Calling. I guess what is it about? This is part one. I intend it to be 3 parts. So, it was originally going to be a game idea that me and a few friends were working on years and years ago. Unfortunately, those plans fell through, and we had to basically shelve it. But I had like 200 some odd pages of notes of different things about characters and stuff, and of course not all of that's going to translate into the book, because you can't just be like, oh well, here's a side quest, why are they doing a random side quest? It really doesn't make sense now, does it? So the so we kind of, certain elements can certainly sneak in, but there's lots of threads of just odds and ends where maybe there's a mention of it, but obviously that's not going to come up in the story as it would in the game. It's just not how that works, nor should it. It is a different media, or a different medium, and so you've got to, you got to balance those things. It was a fun to do that, because the first book I did, and I'll probably do a reading of that at some point, which is it's a little bit more that's a little bit more mean, I guess you could say. But it is that one, and it was it started as a game idea very briefly, but it just never was gonna pan out. So it was just like, but this one was coming along, and it was too much for us to do. And that's sometimes how that goes. Thankfully, I've been given the opportunity, the energy, and the stubbornness would probably be the best way. I don't want to say talent, because it's certainly not talent, but the stubbornness to continue on and try to turn it into a book. And I had fun with it. I'm working on part 2 right now. It's about 100 and some odd pages into it. I'd like to be further, but I've kind of hit a snag, especially in the last month or so. It's been really tough. Discovering that I can't just get back from work and then take a little bit of a break and jump into it, because that's what I was kind of able to do with part 1. Especially toward the end. I am not able to do that now. I need to basically get home from work, maybe take a, get something to eat or something. But after that, I need to get right into it, and then just kind of strike while the iron's hot, kind of thing. Because it's not working going that route. I'm having fun with it, because especially because initially, like the game idea, would cover. I was just going to be a duology. However, with while writing part one out, I stumbled upon something that's like, oh, no, this should be three parts. This should be three parts, and so it's going to be three parts. So, yeah, that bring this back up for visual, but the cover, the design, at least for just this part, that has always been the intention, much to one buddy's chagrin, possibly. He might not have really liked the cover idea so much, but I don't know if I think he might have. This is going back years and years and years. I want to say that he probably considered it a little pretentious, maybe, for a game title. I always thought of it as the lettering is like a window, so you're getting a look-see into the world kind of thing, and it stuck with me. I did not draw this myself. My buddy David did. And he also had the forethought to kind of have the subtitle and my name like that. So props to him, and he's also the one that had the spine like so. And then I just kind of like the idea of a very you're not getting a lot of information out of that, for better and for worse. I like that though. I like and I already have the ideas for 2 and 3's covers. It's telling a little bit of a picture. The picture's telling a little bit of a story, but it's I don't want to say it's daring you to open it, but it's more like, I don't want it to come off as like, oh, because maybe there's something that there's like a visual or something, and it'd be like, oh, and then you read it and you're like, oh, I'm not really getting that much out of it, kind of thing. At least for this one, but I don't know. I'm weird. I'm a little weird, so I don't know. I was just kind of thinking. He's like, you know what? I don't know. For me, it's one of the maybe if I'm putting on like how I am, and mine is like, hey, if at least for the person coming into it, the potential reader or something, it sparks an interest, I think that in itself shows a sign of kind of, okay, be a willingness to be like, oh, let me see where you're at. And if it can be, if it can be, if it can be like so, maybe just kind of pique. I like to pique the curiosities for people. Like let it scratch, get the little bit of the brain itch to be like, what is going on here? What it's a book, but so that is that. I will say this though, the subtitle that has always, that for part one has been the same. Like when in the game there was going to be the subtitle for it, but I was very, very much shot down on that one. For whatever reason, the word lover or lovers or love really sets off people in very different ways. You get a lot of just a lot of, nowadays it feels like it's a lot of oh, hey, here's love, but it's like a romantic novel, or as some would put it, word smut. But you get that, or very lustful intentions, very, very but I'm in the camp that love is more than just that sort of thing. There's a lot more to it, and that's kind of what's being explored. Not kind of. I mean, that is what it is being explored there subtly throughout what's going to be these 3 books and such. So. I'm eating the gingerbread one first because I think I like the turtle pecan one a little bit more. But, tasty. Oh. I don't know why I did that. All right. So, yeah, that's just a little bit about that. I just put this out almost a year ago. I think last year, March-ish. I don't think it tells me in the book. No, it doesn't. It just says copyright 2024. I think it was mid-March or so. So, yeah, it was good because it took nearly 4 years between getting this one done and then the first book, which I got right over here. Saedra. This one can go into another time. However, it is not directly tied into. These books are not tied directly into each other. I have intentions, if I am good enough and well behaved enough and live long enough, would like to put out a bunch of books and kind of like almost like an anthology of planet and stuff. So they are not taking place in the same area or anything like that. So yeah, but truthfully, you wouldn't get that. Like there's not really much in the way of there wouldn't be even any like Easter egg hints or anything directly to go, hey, outside of maybe one very small thing, but that's not like that's not really much of anything. So just a little bit, you got your table of contents and stuff, and then you got hello, welcome to part 1 of Saedra's Calling, A Lover's Pilgrimage. This story was originally created for a game a long time ago. When that plan fell through, it was shelved until I could hone it into a novel. Now, it has a chance to be shared, and that makes me happy. Like cleaning the garage after letting it become a cluttered mess for years on end. That's enough for me. We don't have time for me to be sentimental. There's a story to read, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I enjoyed having it bounce around in my noggin for all these years. Thank you, and take care. Yeah. Those things are always so hard to read. I think with Saedra I did a little poem for it, but this time I was like, nah, not so much. So the index is actually the idea to put the index up front. So that's kind of one of the things that games get a lot of flack for, is a lot of lore dumping, and just it can be a hard line to straddle if you're in a different world and you want to try to be like, hey, this is kind of important. There's the way of trying to exposit that, and games that can be really, really tough. I think they've probably gotten a little bit better with it, because especially now that you can just do the index thing, and be like, hey, if you want to know more about it, over here. I think that is a smart way to go about it, because then you can also kind of you can thread some other little parts of the story, or just kind of weave some other parts of lore, background, and what have you there, and not be like, oh, hey, well, I need to tell this because it needs to be really important. It's like, no. Yeah, if you want some winks and nods for something, possibly, go into the index. There might be some things in there. Then if you're reading it, you can, just kind of read through it, like some things don't really have much in the way of oh, they're not really brought up, maybe just very briefly, just as a line. So but in the same hand, it's that balance. It's like, what do you want to try to focus on? Do you want to try to be like, I want to tell all these things and whatnot, or do you want to just say this, but for the character it's important, but how do you make, like, do you want to try to make it feel like it's important to the reader in the same way? Like, I don't know. All our brains are a little bit different functioning. Some much better than others. And mine is very smooth, so I try my best to think of ways that it can kind of keep it flowing, because that's the other thing too, is flow, right? That is very important, that it flows. Now, does my story flow very well? I don't know. I feel that it does, because it's sort of in here. I mean, it's on there now, but when I was writing it and everything, it felt like it was flowing. That's another. So that's another. I was gonna say. What is it, like a personal thing, right? That's, for some people, that's how they do it. That's for them, this is the way that it flows, and that's the way it makes sense. For some people, it's like, I don't feel like it doesn't vibe with me. So, but the idea to put the index up front was from, I did have an editor look at Saedra, and she gave feedback and stuff, and I have tried to take those lessons to heart, because it was very expensive, at least for me, because I do not have lots of money, so I try to do what I can, and just figure it all out, which sometimes it's for the better, sometimes it's not so good. But she was the one that recommended put the index up front, and I thought it was a genius idea to do that. Partially because, if you don't know something, like, what are they talking about? I try to write in a way that, at least for certain things, you can get the inference of it. Maybe not immediately, but hopefully by the time you finish it, you can have a good idea for it. Sometimes the index in there, just like I said, is the extra coloring of information that wouldn't flow properly if it was written in the story as it's going along, like talking about like constellations or something like that. Just, there's no point in being like, well, it's the constellation this, and it's like, no, to the index. To the index you go. Vanished to the index. So well, hello, Slade. So so the person that I had paid to do some editing for Saedra was the one that suggested the index, and so that's why it's up front. And hi, Slade. How's it going? Hope it's going well for you. I was just kind of given some recall and whatnot for the book and all that jazz, and it was about to start. So we will revisit the index after the chapter. So I'm gonna use a little clip. I was gonna say, how am I coming across? I thought I sounded all right, but I I could have just mucked the first 30 minutes and not realized it. Okay. Oh, that, I'll show this real quick, because it's, there we go. You sound good. All right, thank you. Good. And then I will show that. So that is the map that David, who also did the cover and stuff. Oh, there we go. Focus. So he did that, and I will. Let me do this real quick. I'll bring up the. I'll have to find it super fast. Super fast jellyfish. Is it on my desktop? Yes, it is. I found it. It's the grayscale. No, not the. Okay, there it is. Okay. And then this is oh boy. How do I fix this? It's too big. It's too big. Oh, good lord. Dun, 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 dun. Dun, dun, dun. Oh, it's not gonna fit. Oh, phooey. There. Almost there. Yeah, we don't need to see me for a moment. Look at that. Ha ha ha. But, oh, what am I doing? I'm messing. There we go. All right. Okay. So yeah, that is what he came up with. More like I don't know how to put it. Not quite parchment, but what is? I can't remember what it's called, because there's parchment, and then there's stuff that used like animal hide. But the word is not coming to me just yet. But yeah. So this I liked it, and so the complete capitalized stuff is outside of Perel. I noticed it afterwards, but I think it works because the story's mostly taking place in Perel here. So, but you have Rohan, which is this desert land here, and then Kolug, Bruntil, Clohal, Olteo, and then Perel. With the it's not really shown, but like up past Torness and stuff, it's and Dolaire is tundra land where barbarians live. The barbarians. And we start right over here at this little tiny hamlet called Mahri, and then we will kind of venture our way through here. So yeah, that is that. And I now that I'm looking here, okay, thank goodness. I should have double checked to make sure it was on there. But yeah, so okay. So yeah, Mahri is over toward Olteo in the east there in the mountains. You get that. You got River Split, which that's a name I think I can pat myself on the back for. I really like that name of that, River Split. Yeah, so you got Mahri, Colander, River Split, Walleran, Faladne, Sameen, Perel Castletown, Dolaire, Torness. Those are the big towns, cities that are mentioned here in on the map, and just for Perel in general. And then you got Clohal, which is just a singular principality that has built itself on this kind of river delta sort of thing. But they're not important right now. So, but that is that. Ta-da! But yeah. All right, I'm going to finish off this biscotti real quick because I hunger for the cookie. How? But sorry. But yeah. So depending on how long it takes me to read and then maybe discuss a little bit of things, looking to do chapters 1 and 2, maybe 3. Kind of depends. I know they're kind of shorter, but having this intro here is prolonging it. I don't want to stream terribly long. I kind of want these to be a little bit more, maybe like an hour and a half or so at most. little bite-sized streams, which I know probably in the long term of streams and YouTube algorithms is not the way to go, but who cares for those sorts of things? We're here to read a book. Okay. I'll save the other turtle pecan biscotti after chapter 1. Or at least half of it. Okay. Alright. Sorry. But, yeah, alright. So let us get into it. So, also something, this was a personal decision that I made. If you look, the chapters are just listed as chapter 1, 2, yada, 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 yada. And then when you actually get to the chapter, they are titled. I did not do that for Saedra. I don't think I did. I think I just left them as I just left them as the title. Or, I'm sorry, not the title, as the just chapter 1, chapter 2, and stuff. Because not as important to me, but for that book, it was less what I wanted to do with it. But for this one, I wanted to have the title. I like titles for things, because sometimes you can sneak in some stuff that at the time you're reading it, you might just be like, why is it called that? And even afterwards, it might not be something you care, but it's just that extra little bit of information that you're kind of like, what you doing here? Not always, but sometimes it's just there to be like, huh. But I kept it away from that so that any sort of plot twist or spoiler or whatnot is not so quick to be like, oh, hey. I could just see it in the title of the chapters all throughout the contents page. Why would I don't even need to read the book. The end. That sort of thing. But yeah. So let us begin. Okay. So all right. Chapter 1: The Clearing. A steady light poured into the opening of a small clearing on the mountainside, like the final call before night steadily took command. Checkered around the clearing, waving in the breeze, leaves of a variety of yellows, reds, and oranges, browning due to winter's nearing, swayed this way and that. Others, no longer filled with the strength of summer, released their grip on the branches they had once made home, joining the winds in a brief dance before claiming new territory on the ground. Dotting some of the maples, extracting precious sap to be used for ceremonial and celebratory mead and winter syrups, wooden spiles stared inward where a cluster of large stumps bunched together near the center of the clearing. Perched on one, with fading purple asters by his feet, a young villager plucked away at his 10-stringed lute. Lazily slouched over, the young man moved his quill purposelessly, back and forth, over the tightly wound strings. Though surrounded by the beauty of the warm colors of late fall, his thoughts did not dwell on warm feelings. His mind wandered through an unstill daydream, equal measures anxious excitement and weighted concern, while his sapphire eyes dug deeper into a hazy oblivion. His ears listened to the music of nature. From the rustling of the leaves to the jovial whistling of the birds to the somewhat distant din of his village, the sounds of life mingled with the lute's notes, and unconsciously, as though temporarily struck with inspiration by the divine, it returned to him. Much like a persistent fly attempting to land on his food, the song danced inside his head. It tormented him, even as a small child, as if begging him to release it unto the world, to be shared with others, to be freed from its prison inside his heart and mind, but only if he could ensnare it. As he grew older and practiced daily, the song silently withdrew, evading his thoughts and fingers altogether. It hid itself in the deepest folds of his mind, never taunting, but waiting until worry crept into his heart before making itself known once more. Blinking a few times, the villager pulled himself out of his own mental quagmire and took a deep breath. He puffed out his cheeks and slowly exhaled. Straightening his posture, the young man twirled his quill a few times before resuming his practice. With renewed focus, he played with purpose, chasing that hidden song. Yet, after plucking a few notes, he sat stumped on how to continue, playing the same batch of notes, over and over. The song had eluded him once more. Jaharo! Just as a note, I'm not good with voices, so I will try my best. Jaharo! Saved from myself. Jarl placed his lute to the side and faced the only path connecting the clearing in the village. He cupped his hands around his mouth. Over here, Tamilia. Moments later, his friend popped into view. Not quite jogging, but hurriedly closing the distance between them nonetheless. In her hands, she carried a buckler, a spear, and a short sword, all of which were wooden. I figure I'd find you here. Of course, it helps that I heard you practicing. Her hazel eyes surveyed the area where he now stood. A smile spread across her face as she lifted up the items she was carrying. Brought these along to help get your mind off of what's happening. His vision drifted aimlessly as he sucked on a tooth. Then he gestured to his instrument as he moved away from the stumps in a vain effort to stave off what she had in mind. That's what the lute's for. The young woman shot him a sour look. Oh, come on. We both know you get a little too lost in your head sometimes. He leaned slightly forward toward his friend. And? She raised an eyebrow. And we both know that's not good for you. Never said it was. He sighed as he attempted to ignore the pleading look she was now giving him by staring through her. You won't take no for an answer. You won't take no for an answer? No. She grinned wildly, exposing her teeth on one side of her mouth. He stepped back. Fine. With an excited hop, she tossed her friend the spear. No, I already found something. Oh, this is gonna be along forever, ain't it? Oh, how did I do this? Okay. How did I do that? Tisk tisk. All right. With an excited hop, she tossed her friend the spear. Then she diligently went about fastening the straps of the buckler around her left forearm. After finishing, she tested how well it stayed in place by banging the sword across its front. Satisfied, she nodded and stepped a few paces backward to give her opponent more space, which he used by wildly swinging his weapon to the left and right. Eyeing her opponent's motions, she mentally noted his quickness, or lack thereof, before warming up with a mock fight of her own. Sharp, decisive stabs, coupled with parries using her shield, sweeping away from her body, wiped away her smile, and etched her face with a stern look of determination to win. Sparring slowed the world around her, and for a moment her thoughts revolved solely around what her opponent would do. The troubles of the village, the potential hardships to come, the approach of winter, none of those issues concerned her, as her more primal instincts took command. Unlike his friend, Jaharo liked sparring, but did not feel much like doing it, particularly when it came at the cost of time to practice his lute. Fate will settle who will win, Tamilia. Why are we doing this? I don't have a good way to put it, but this is mental thoughts. I do that by doing italysis for it, so. Because I think sometimes it's important to get into a character's head. After stretching his arms, he slowly inhaled. I'm ready whenever you are. Even though that's not a slow inhale, that's a fast. Tamilia confirmed with a grunt and lunged forward. Jaharo thrust his spear to greet his challenger. Wood struck wood as the sword hit the spear, pushing it aside. Before she could close the gap, he pulled back and stepped to his right, faintly stabbing again to keep some distance. The dull tip glanced off her shield, but as she tried to knock it away, he jerked the spear back and swung it over his head and struck at her right side. She stopped the blow with the flat of her sword. Their eyes met. Tamilia faintly grinned. Lurching her right shoulder forward forced him to open his frame for attack. Instinctively, she grasped the shaft of the spear between his hands with her left hand. For a brief moment, she had her back to him as she tried to bring the spear closer to her body. He yanked the spear back in an effort to force her to let go, or to pull her close enough to grab her. But her grip held firm long enough to slow him down. Swift as lightning, she released her hold on the spear and spun to her right, chopping into her opponent's upper arm, but not too terribly forceful with the strike. Gotcha! Tamilia smirked and eased her stance. Jarl stabbed the soil with the spear and rubbed his arm. Yeah, I might have put up a bit of a better fight had you come sooner. Don't be making excuses. She stuck out her tongue and winked as she unfastened the shield from her arm. See? I knew it. Your head's still lost in that music of yours. I ought to smack it next time instead of your arm. It might clear up some of that buzzing in there. It might, he chuckled. Let me read that again. It might, he chuckled. Though I thought I was making progress this time around. Tamilia groaned. Don't you say that every time, though? I might. Her eyes narrowed as she watched her friend lean against the spear. Well, I don't know how much it'll help, but they're almost ready to have that gathering tonight. He pushed the spear away, toppling it to the ground. Why didn't you say so sooner? Oh, they told me to find you, but I thought it'd be better to take my time and miss out on most of the preparations. Tamilia tossed the shield along with the sword toward where the spear had fallen. The young man shook his head. Leave it to you to sneak us out of doing some work. She cupped a hand to her ear. I don't hear you complaining, do I? He shook his head again, adding in a brief laugh and smile. Not at all. Good. Anyway, we ought to leave that stuff here. All right, I can only imagine how grouchy Elder Gerald would be seeing us bringing that back and not helping at all with dinner, or setting up for the gathering. Tamilia snorted. She bunched up her face and masked her voice in the best gravel tone she could to mimic the elder's voice. Damned kids, playing more than working. If it's happening in Mahri, I can only imagine how bad it is throughout Parale. That's about as good as it's going to get. Sounds about right. The two shared a laugh and began to walk back to Mahri. Dinner's probably going to be a lighter one because the gathering. It might go well into the night. Her remark elicited a grumble from Jaharl. I know they're all going to bicker and shout about this, but I don't care what they decide. I'm doing it, regardless. Halmdril can judge me for it when I'm resting in the soil. And I'll be there with you no matter what. I'll be there with you, no matter what. Tamilia replied, patting her friend on the shoulder. Jaharl returned the gesture, no matter what. Let's hope Halmdril is a fair god, and... Hey, where are you going? Don't want to leave my loot. I'll be back before you know it. Jogging to the center of the clearing, he snatched up his instrument and surveyed the area. With dusk quickly arriving, the softening light further dulled the vibrancy of the clearing's surroundings. In his head, this may be it. The young man sighed and looked over the stumps and the flowers, thinking of memories both fresh and old. For a moment, a longing welled up in his chest. As suddenly as the feeling had appeared, it dissipated. He cleared his throat and sped back to Tamilia, not wanting to make his friend wait much longer due to his forgetfulness. As he neared, she placed her hands on her side. Goodness, I thought I'd be gray and wrinkly by the time you returned. He did not stop. Instead, he quickened his pace. His trot morphed into a sprint as he dashed past his stand-still friend. A grin flashed across his face as he called out, Race you, Honeyfeet! Honeyfeet! She darted after him. You're the one that's slower than molasses. Together they ran to Mahri. Anticipation filled their hearts as they rushed through the mountains, mountainous force. Let me try that again. Anticipation filled their hearts as they rushed through the mountainous forest trail, while a chill from the approaching night air gently descended upon them and their village. They paid it no mind, though, as they rushed forward, ready to embrace the path ahead or carve one out themselves. That's the end of chapter 1. Hi there, B Clerk, 1 million power. Hello. No, you don't have to be sorry you're late. I appreciate you coming by. But yeah, that is chapter 1. It is what you say. It's the stats. So some stuff up. So yeah, a couple things. So couple things that were mentioned. Hamdrel is the god of dirt, the eternal observer and judge of the people, married to Saedra, goddess of the sky, eternal protector of the people. So, that is, so there are, different pantheons of gods and deities and whatnot, and this is one of a few of them there. And Hamdrel is, like I said, kind of, like I said, god of dirt, eternal observer, and judge of people. Got an eye on you. Mahri is a small mountain hamlet in the kingdom of Perael, near Olteo, known throughout the kingdom for their honey and maple. And then Perael is the kingdom where the story takes place, at war with Olteo, but has good relations with most its neighbors. So, it is a kind of a backdrop, at least in part 1, with the war. It is not something that's really, how to put it, for the characters, even though they're right there by it, it is not something that they have to as much to deal with, and it's not really it's not really important in the sense of like their lives. It has not. It hasn't really done anything to them. They keep a watchful eye on it, but it's not. It hasn't been bad. So now to take in the glorious biscotti. This one's the turtle pecan one. But so the first chapter is just you get these are the two protagonists of the story, Jaharl and Tamilia. And Jaharl, I know, I have gotten a lot of pushback from a lot of people with some of the names of things, and that one certainly had given irritants to a few different people because they're like, it doesn't sound good to say, Jaharl. Biscottis are delicious, yes. It's my Saturday morning comfy ritual to eat a biscotti or two with some giant coffee. But I don't know. I try, so throughout the book, and just with names in general, and I do this with Sudraba as well. So Sudraba is Latvian for silver. And that kind of plays into the story a little bit. But Saedra does not have quite that sort of thing. But what I try to... It can be a really hard thing to be like making up a name and not make it sound completely A, ridiculous, B, just, I don't know. Like, you get into sci-fi names back in the day, throwing a, half a dozen X's and a couple Z's and a Y for good measure, and you've got E, whatever, just like that. It was the great supreme commander of the Pluforf, pomp and circumstance empire of whatever. Like, it is not old sci-fi stories had some very silly names. That's what I'm getting. But basically, I'm trying to, I try to seed in names that aren't real enough so that that you wouldn't be able to tell. Yeah, I have no idea how to pronounce some of those names. You know what's really awful? Phantasy Star. Phantasy Star 4's monsters have some of the most ridiculous names. I love them, but you were like, what is... Who dropped the Scrabble bag? But well, so the pushback I got on Jaharl is that it sounds like hurl, and that you are almost in the but you get certain languages have that where there's that sort of thing, and that's not to say where this is going, but for whatever reason that name just sort of came up. It is and I was like, it's got to be here. Yes. That's a real name. That's an unfortunate name. That's a dreadful name. How do you even say that? Oh, goodness. Oh, I pushed back. Nothing. Yeah, I was just kind of like, I know I can put my foot down obnoxious, but I was like, no, Jaharl. Like, you have to. I mean, I guess Jaharl, okay, but no, like that's why the J is there. It's Jaharl. Ha ha ha. But I just I don't know. It was something to come up with a different kind of name, and enough to where it's okay. There's and I look up older names of things for just throughout to intersplice in there, because one character that'll come up later, briefly, but she'll come up later. Her name is Asen, and that's actually a Turkish word, and just I like to do that. And that could. There's probably people named Asen, but it was just kind of like, yeah, like I like that. That was just borrow enough from the peoples all around, and to be like, okay, cool, and then we'll see, because that's all we're doing for each other is throwing layups to hopefully make baskets. And I've decided to make mine a wicker basket. So but yeah, Jaharl and Tamilia had those two names were theirs from the get-go. There was anything different about them. I'm trying to think, has anybody and I'll mention them throughout because they'll pop up. The characters that were intended to be playable characters in the game, their names, I stuck with them from the get-go. Like, I was like, yes. However, two characters in particular have had some very wild changes from game to book. But, yeah. Which has been... It was a little unfortunate, but I've figured out one fix for one, and then the other one I think it turns out for the better. My biscotti broke. So, okay. I'm trying to think. Somebody who read this, it was my No, it wasn't that. They read they tried to read that and they didn't really care for it, but they actually really like Sudraba. They told me, they're like, that first page is awful, but I loved it afterwards. I was like, that's usually not the best, the best thing for it, but glad for the honesty, and glad it got better from the first page. All right, I'm going to finish this and we'll get into chapter 2. And we'll probably just do chapter 2 and then leave it at that. Anything else I want to mention? So, a couple points I should mention. The big important things. One is the fatalistic attitude of Jaharl, and then the at least the more gung ho, willing to go to bat Tamilia. Those qualities are important for the story ahead. The setting has. It's the setting. The setting is like I will still probably feel the way after I read through this again. But I always felt that the first couple, like handful of chapters or so, is very comfy. I'd be like, I could just be here, do what I need to do, drink some tea, enjoy chopping some wood or something, and then that would be it. It was my kind of mountainous Walden. So, it was nice to be able to do that, because I don't know, it that's the other thing too. Like when I started to write this, and because it had initially been as a game, the idea of very heavy with the trope stuff of in games is that the main characters are young, and they are young. However, a lot of times it's their parents have died or something like that. No, their parents are fine. They have very loving families. So I wanted to have that, make sure that's in there and stuff. And it is a nice. That will be important, I think, as the story goes along, for different reasons than what may be expected. Because, yeah. I'll just leave it at that. So, let us dive into chapter 2. We'll probably just stick with doing chapters 1 and 2 today, and then next week go from there. So, all right, chapter 2, supper at Mahri. So that is a word I very much like. Supper. We don't say supper much anymore. That was really stupid. I have no idea what I said. I don't know. Similar to a balding spot developing on the head of an old man, the people of Mahri had spent generations clearing trees and shrubberies on the mountainside where they lived. Long homes made of wood skirted the perimeter of the village, resting on a higher elevation. Oh, hello. Let's see. I lost it. Resting on a higher elevation than the land surrounding it, like a small plateau. A sturdy log fence that stood waist high shielded the western portion of the village, protecting the villagers from carelessly falling down into the steep vale leading into the neighboring kingdom of Volteo, which was thick with vegetation and home to beasts both feared and rumored to exist. The other directions offered paths snaking this way and that, flanked on both sides by trees to other areas where they grew their food and housed smaller animals. Like a blanket snug tightly against the body on a cold evening, the aroma of the village's supper wafted through the air. The smell beckoned the villagers, hungry, after a long day's worth of work preparing for winter's arrival. Filled with the promise of a warm meal, they rushed about, gathering their wooden bowls, spoons, and cups. Panting and perspiring, Jaharl, followed shortly by Tamelia, emerged from the southern path entrance. A quick survey of Marie was all they needed to notice everyone was already congregating near the fire pits in the center of the village. In one, a large cauldron, brought in from the capital of Piraeum, sat with a simmering leek and potato soup. Beside it, a wide, circular iron plate lay over top another pit, which was baking oat cakes by the dozens. Once finished, the oat cakes were given to the children to place them on a large table, where the kids would use small brushes to coat them with a generous portion of maple or honey and set roasted apple wedges on top of them. The last pit in use had a massive pot filled with broad beans and dusted with a moderate helping of salt and pepper. "Evening, you two." Jan waved to her son and his friend as they sheepishly closed the distance. She hounded down another bite of soup as they returned the salutations. A stern expression blinked across her face, but she recovered hastily before continuing. "Good thing you two got back now. We're all dying of thirst over here." Tamelia wrinkled her nose. "You didn't set out anything to drink?" "Aye, busy daughter of mine, we did," Ballard interjected as he wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. "But we all figured since you and Jahar wanted to do a bit of sparring, you might have worked up a bit of thirst yourselves." "Aye," Classo added. "Don't worry, son. The cart's got a few barrels already loaded on it." "And where's it at?" Jahar mumbled. Another, more muted question under his breath as his friend cast a sour glance at her father. Classo pointed off to the northwest, beyond the fire pits. Off to the northwest, beyond the fire pits. Right in front of Keith's cellar. "Shout out if the Argia come out and try to grab you," Ballard jokingly warned. Did I do that? Hold on. Time out! Yes. Okay. Alright, shout out if the Argia come out and try to grab you, Ballard jokingly warned. A ripple of laughter sprung up from the villagers. Then they were back to merrily chatting, draped in the light from the tall torches that encircled them, as well as the flames from the fire pits, while the sky above rusted and darkened. The young man lifted his instrument to grab his friend's attention. "I'll meet you there. I'm going to put my lute away and grab my bowling spoon." "Aye, that'll give me time to grab mine too. Oh, and don't forget your birthstone." "Ah, thanks for the reminder." Ballard cleared his throat loudly. "Hurry up, you two. We're getting mighty thirsty." Tamelia held back the urge to toss back an obscene gesture, though she did grumble out a response. "Oh, dip your head in honey." "What was that?" "Nothing. Must be hearing things." "Aye, Dad. You're getting old. Mom may need to keep an eye on that." Nowhere near, her father belted out a hearty laugh, which was joined by a mixture of laughs and groans. Jaharl shook his head, stifling a chuckle. Then he jogged over to his home and placed his lute inside, away from the entrance. He collected his eating utensils quickly, then went over to his hammock and dug through a small unlocked chest that sat on the floor nearby. Sifting through his belongings, like the old weathered cloak of his great-grandfather and faded dice from his childhood, he eventually found his birthstone. Carved into his piece of blue apatite. Apatite? I think you say it's apatite. Appetite. Let's find that out. Words that you don't know how to say. A-P-A. Apapatite. I'm probably saying I can't even spell it now because I'm I'm floundering. A-P-A-T-I-T-E. Say. Oh, can't I just how to pronounce? I don't want to go to YouTube to how to pronounce. Oh, for phooey's sake. Let's see if I can get around this. Merriam-Webster, save me.
Appetite.
It is appetite. Look at that. I'm good. Appetite. I have an appetite for appetite. But Okay. Carved into his piece of blue apatite with knife points and plenty of patience, his birthstone possessed 3 groups of markings. One was his name, and above it, the date of his birth corresponding to his star sign. The third, though he knew it by heart rather than by attempting to read it, was a small prayer at the bottom. From the stone we are born, to it we shall return. Promptly leaving his home, he caught up to his friend, who clutched her own birthstone of serpentine and eating utensils, as she turned the corner of Keith's home. A slope between his longhouse and the beginning of the forest guided the pair downward toward the cellar. As they rounded another corner to reach the cellar entrance, they stopped dead in their tracks, narrowly avoiding the cart. I think they could have placed it any closer to the corner? She shoved the cart's handle, which resisted the force. I'm surprised they didn't have someone hiding over here to scare us. He eyed the area out of caution as he continued. Or have a fake Argia propped on the cart or something, you know. A fake Argia? She stifled a laugh. Aren't they all fake? You don't think Anders' tale has some truth to it? The mountain forest is wild and thick with trees. Who knows what's out there? You take Ander at his word? The same Ander we know? The one who's a few bees short of a proper hive? Jarl shrugged his shoulders. Well, what he said is possible. Tamelia snorted. Might as well ask the bees themselves to find our mystical Argia. He shot her a look. All I'm saying is it's possible. Ander used to be one of the best at dealing with the bees before his accident. At least that's what everyone says. Something must have happened. He took a tumble into the vale after too much meat and bumped his head. She quickly slung back. Whatever. He placed his belongings in the cart and grabbed one of the cart's handles, motioning for his friend to do the same. Let's get this up there before they're shouting the remaining leaves off the trees because we're taking too long for him. Works for me. She grabbed the other handle. 1, 2, 3, push! The sturdy hand-propelled wheel... how about I read that again? The sturdy, hand-propelled wheel cart carried 3 small barrels. 2 were painted with a yellow stripe, and the third with a blue one. Outside of a little movement going up the slope, they remained in place on their way to the fire pits. The pair's grunts and the cart's creaking announced their approach as the two eventually trudged back to their families and friends. A chorus of cheers, cups, and food greeted them once they stopped the cart a short distance away from the center of the village. Cool water from the mountain river Husren and mead flowed from the barrels into the empty cups of the villagers as they drank moderately. The 2 friends devoured their bowls of soup before setting their hunger upon the few remaining oatcakes, bellies filled as the fires calmed their wild dancing, settling into a sway of steady flames. Dusk evaporated into night, and the young ones grew tired, but wanted a tale before sleep whisked them to the realm of dreams. Tonight, Elder Aaliyah accepted the duty to entertain the children, as the older villagers cleaned the mess from supper. She moved about energetically, belying her advanced age. She mentally deliberated on an appropriate tale to tell them, but she kept her thoughts. How about I read this again? Let's try this again from the top. Tonight, Elder Leah accepted the duty to entertain the children. As the older villagers cleaned the mess from supper, she moved about energetically, belying her advanced age. She mentally deliberated on an appropriate tale to tell them, but she kept such thoughts to herself. There we go. My, have you grown since I saw you gathering those apples with your mother earlier today, Percy? Maybe. The boy stood on his toes and stretched his arms toward the sky. I see it now. You stuffed yourself with so many of those oatcakes, your belly grew. The elder flashed a smile, while many of the children laughed, and those closest to Percy poked his stomach, which caused him to double over briefly. When she witnessed him plop himself in the dirt and pout, she rubbed her own stomach. It's all right, little one. I think I had as many as you did, maybe more. The young ones laughed harder. sticking out their stomachs to show everyone else, and more importantly Percy, joined in the merriment. Like the snap of a whip, the storyteller changed her demeanor to a more serious tone, and her audience followed suit. Okay, enough jokes for now. I want you all to look up. All right? Tell me what you see. A cacophony of voices shouted hurried answers. Leaves! Trees! The great mountain! Some clouds? Liana and her lantern. My feet! They all turned to the child who gave such an answer, only to find she was laying on the ground with her feet in the air. Groans and giggles intermingled with one another. Then, the answer the elder wanted was shouted above the silliness. The sheet of stars! Possibly think of doing that. Aye! Elder Leah clapped her hands. All fine answers, but I was waiting to hear someone say the sheet of stars. And does anyone remember how they got there? Halmdrel? Not quite, but good guess, Clara. Anyone else want to guess? The old woman glanced around as a few of the kids tapped their heads, while others furrowed their brows, trying to recall all the tales they had heard. No worries, little ones. I'll tell you. All those white dots, those things that might also sparkle red, maybe blue, they are the eyes of the Almighty One, Ziffin. Long ago, before you and I, before Pirael, before people walked on Hanal, only darkness was around. It was everywhere, and ruled by Ziffin, the master of darkness. Alone in the dark, he was powerful, but also very lonely. And so, using his powers, he decided to make something different. He made a god, Halmdrel. Unlike his creator, Halmdrel could only create one thing. So he dreamed, and soil came to him in the realm of dreams. When he woke up, he created Hanal. Happy to see something other than darkness, the feeling of loneliness washed away. That happiness bred competition, and Ziffin and Halmdrel made a sport of their powers, competing to see who could build greater worlds. However, no matter how hard Halmdrel tried, Ziffin's works were always greater. A long time passed. Bored, Ziffin made another, a goddess, Saedra, and kept her creation a secret from Halmdrel. Even though she had the same power as Halmdrel, no dreams came to her. She lived happily unaware of anything except Ziffin's awesome light. Eventually, Halmdrel discovered Saedra. Anger and jealousy filled him. He challenged Ziffin to become the master of darkness, and a great battle broke out. As the fierce fight raged on, the darkness tore itself little by little. In those spots, great lights shone through, and Ziffin used those lights to find Halmdrel. But before he could win, Saedra appeared. She, like a moth to an open flame, was drawn to Halmdrel and his struggle. It was then that she dreamed of the sky and stood between the bitter rivals. Neither god chanced an attack, fearful of hitting her. Saedra joined Halmdrel, while Ziffin, weary from the battle, left to dwell in his ever-growing darkness. Through the sheets of stars, he checks on the gods, hoping Halmdrel doesn't revolt again, and Saedra changes her mind to return to him once more. Elder Leah relaxed in her seat as the buzz of the children chatting filled her ears. Soon enough, she was presented with a question she felt needed a response. Why do we pray to Myron and Halmdrel if Ziffin is more powerful? Aye, with Ziffin's power, no one would have a bad life. The simplicity of youthful thinking. Leah sighed. Look around you. Does the soil feel firm under your feet? Does the sky shelter you from falling forever into the darkness? I guess. Do you think so too, Percy? I? The old woman snorted. Maybe you lot need the honey cleaned from your ears and maple wiped from your eyes. Even with all that power, Ziffin couldn't make himself, or the creations he loved so much, happy. Why is that? There was a great pause filled with ums and hms before a triumphant voice spoke.
Because power doesn't mean happiness. Aye, Clara. Now, I think that's a good place to stop. Time for bed. A chorus of moans. A chorus of moans poured from the children as the adults who had been patiently waiting for predators stopped. Say that again. A chorus of moans poured from the children as the adults, who had been patiently waiting, like predators stalking wounded prey, swiftly descended upon the young ones and ushered them to bed. Pleas to stay up were met with parental disagreement. None could escape the terror that was bedtime. During this sad march for the children, Jaharl and Tamilia took their seats and waited for the meeting to begin. A season's worth of waiting had brought the villagers little but a few pieces of parchment and hearts filled with anxiety. Slowly, yet steadily, that uneasiness settled in their stomachs as the protests from the children dissolved into the quietude of night. It's weird, isn't it? What, the silence? It's nice after all that noise. She weakly kicked at the ground, causing a cloud of dust to materialize before drifting back to the ground. He shook his head, brown hair flailing as he did. Nah, your grandmother's tale. She gave him a quizzical glance. What are you on about? We've heard that tale probably more times than there are trees in the forest. And the young man chuckled. I'll take your word for it. I'd be fine going a few seasons before hearing it again. But why is it weird? You know how it goes. Not like I hit you on the head earlier to forget it. Aye, little one. Jaharl gruffed his voice to sound like Ballard's, which earned him a hearty shove. Grasping her shoulder, he avoided toppling over the log and sat back up. He resumed speaking with his natural voice. Good thing I didn't bump my head. Why? She feinted another shove, but stopped when she noticed her friend was braced for the attack. Afraid it would knock some sense into you? This time he got the advantage and pushed her. The quick jolt caught her off guard as she grabbed his arm. He let out a raspy laugh as she let go of him once she was stable. Maybe. Anyway, what I was getting at is we've heard that story so many times, but tonight I got a different message out of it. Oh, what's that? I feel like it was saying that even if we had that power to control things, something somewhere will slip through our grip, like trying to grab a dry leaf too quickly. It'll break apart, and some pieces will fall through our hands. Tamilia shook her head. You're overthinking it. Jarl let out a grunt. You think? Aye. Together, the pair gazed up at the sheet of stars and continued waiting for the gathering to begin. So that is the end of chapter 2. I'll get to the index and then we'll... Okay, so... Okay, I shouldn't have done that because there's a lot here. So, chapter 2 has a lot more words brought in for things. And like I was mentioning before started reading today, the importance of the index pops up right in chapter 2. Because if you try to do a bunch of... I mean, there is a kind of a lore dump, right? Because you're getting like a creation myth. Or what these people believe. And then not only that, but you're also getting an idea of the lessons that they're trying to imbue into their children. You have to think about it this way, right? You have a small mountain hamlet with, maybe like a dozen or so? Probably a little bit more than that, but, it's a small little collection of people up in the mountains. They don't have a lot of they don't have a lot of power. They don't have a lot of might. So they rationalize these things in certain ways. Hence why that creation myth's that way, and why the elder is kind of pointing to, well, that's not what power isn't what's important. And Yeah, and you can be the judge of that. But also, yeah, with all these different words of things, to have some sort of lore dump into what it is, this is where the index becomes mighty, mighty nice. So it's not like, oh, the Argia, the mythical monster thing. Like, it's seated in there a little bit, like with Tamelia going, well, aren't they all fake? Because it's almost like Bigfoot. The Argia are Bigfoot, sort of ish. In fact, let me read it. Argia, mythic creature, said to have been created before humans by the god of mountains and luck, Myron, to scare his brother, the god of jealousy, Atumu. They became neglected once humans were created. Pale in complexion and short but stout, they warred with humans to regain the love of their creator. They lost and hid themselves throughout the world. Some secretly believe they are the ancestors of the Saul. And the Saul are the northern barbarians. But this is why the index is nice, because I can put these things in here, and people can reference them and get more details on things that they wouldn't have just simply reading the story. I don't know. I kind of like that idea because it's you see it in games all the time. They do that sort of thing. People love Dark Souls, and Dark Souls does that with everything. So, nanner. Yeah. So, and that's that. Birthstone, made from various minerals, which are determined upon one's birth. I think how like a ruby is like a birthstone for the July and stuff. So, used in Mahri for voting purposes, and that'll come up next chapter. Boy, does it ever, right? And I'm not against it. Like, I think I like that idea. I think it is extreme in Dark Souls, but a lot of people like it. And to me, that theory of storytelling is one that I agree with, because what it does is it allows for a lot of hooks for people to latch onto, as opposed to being given everything. But some people like the being given everything. I am not one of those people. If there's a little bit of wiggle room for somebody who reads the story to be like, oh, I want to take that and use it for something else. Cool. Glad that it had some sort of inspiration for you and you found it interesting. Great. That, like I said earlier, everybody's throwing layups to one another. You just got to make the basket, right? Yeah, I think it's a cool way to do it, because I think if too much, it just bounces off my head like a dodgeball. So, Hanal is the name of the planet. At least what they call it, Hanal, Hinal. The Husran River. Don't know where I even came up with that one. That one, the Husran. Sounds like it's a great river. And it is. It's a mountain river near Mahri. Flows into the Granal. Liana and her lantern is the colloquial name for the two moons. So they have a two moon system where it's kind of, a lot of things have it, but think of it almost like one moon, two moon, red moon, blue moon, and so it's Liana and her lantern. Myron is the god of mountains and luck, and is married to Daniil, who is the goddess of beauty. Alteo is the kingdom to the east of Perael, currently at war with Perael. Saedra is the goddess of the sky and protector of the people, married to Hamdrel, god of dirt, eternal observer and judge of the people. And I thought that, I guess I luckily stumbled into a mythological telling of like how the, why isn't that the space and everything. How has that not just come crashing down on us? I guess that was kind of my way of coming up with a creation story of how people might explain it. Oh, well, I mean, it's not like it's completely out of the blue. I imagine that when you've got the Atlas holding up the sky. I just went one step further and went space and stuff. But it was fun to make up myth. The sheet of stars. That's another thing I try to do a lot of. I noticed is it's the Starry Night Sky, is trying to come up with different ways to say the night sky, and all that sort of. So yeah, I do the same thing with the sun. I never refer to the sun as the sun, or at least try not to. Nor do I say sunlight. I say daylight or something like that. I try very hard. And then Ziffin is the god of the cosmos. I don't have it right on hand, but I do have a pantheon. So you've gotten mention of Ziffin, god of the cosmos, creates Hamdrel, Saedra. But I actually center this. Ziffin, Hamdrel, Saedra, and then they have kids. Myron, Daniil, and Atumu have been listed so far. Myron is the first god, the first son, and then Daniil, I think, is the first daughter, and then Atumu, I think, is the second son. I think they came out in triplets. Was the idea. And Myron, mountains, and luck, and it starts to get a little bit different. You see this in mythologies and stuff as they go along. There's a little bit like of an alteration. Egyptian mythology, there's a lot of replacement. You see this in Greco-Roman mythologies as well. There's a lot of, for lack of a better way to phrase it, skin changing. So they go from they just this one thing, but now they're kind of starting to believe in this one has this one. There's emotions starting to get tied into it, luck, or that sort of thing. You have one who's strictly jealousy, how that comes about, and Atumu is different in the sense of here you've got Halmdrel, which is ties into Jaharl, like a lot of that RL sounding, so in just a linguistic sense, tying it there. Hamdrel, Saedra, Myron, Daniil, they're all kind of similar, and then all of a sudden you get this very weird Atumu name, and it's similarly you can see this where there's just like something's weird about this, but if you look from the map earlier, there's even Mahri has this. There's certain places that I think that just the two on the map, Mahri and Tornes, have kind of a, I don't want to say it's a diphthong, but it's like a diphthong is where you drop sounds or like lettering and stuff. Instead of saying better, you say better, like better. Means that's not a good way to put it. It's like you're dropping sounds, and it's kind of a similar thing. Instead of you're impregnating the word with a little bit of either a pause or tying the sound together. So tornes, instead of saying tornes, if that makes sense. Instead of saying mahri, kind of whatcha. I don't know what I'm doing. But yeah. So that what else? So I am a big fan of Brian Jakes, who wrote the Redwall series, and he has a lot of food descriptions and stuff. So I tried with Sage's part 1 to intermingle in like more food descriptions and not excessive or feasts, because they're not having feasts. These are just more kind of low-key affair. meals in a way, a little bit more communal. So it's plus you don't want to have a feast when you're a mountain village when winter's about to approach, unless it's if you're getting rid of stuff that's about to go bad. um, so, I tried to be a little bit more descriptive in the food stuffs, especially compared to Sudraba. So that was I liked doing that, and it was like, yes, foods, have the victuals. That, and like I said at the end of chapter 1, chapter 2 having that more playfulness. You see that the village isn't some, there's no dark seedy secret. I mean, outside of, there's references to Ander and what may have happened to him. And the Argia, these mythic creatures that, think of it, like I said, if I was to, I say Bigfoot, and I'm joking about that, but if I was to rationalize a good analogy for what the Argia were like inspired by, it'd probably be what is my brain's farting. What is his name? A guy who wrote Conan the Barbarian. Why can I not think of his name? There we go. Robert E. Howard. He wrote low key emphasis on food and runs through everything I've read. So right. It's just trying to be a little bit more like Redwall has all those feasts and food. I think food can be really, really nice and important to get into, and that thread will carry on throughout. I'll have to think of how I want to try to tackle it in part 3, but especially for part 2, it'll be very important as that goes along. It's just sometimes it's just nice and comfy and cozy to have that food in there. That and the music in there, the little songs and stuff, that's important. Important. That's a diphthong right there. Instead of saying important. Haha, I can figure this out. The Argia were kind of, if I was to take an inspirational vibe from, is how Robert E. Howard wrote Bron Morn in description of the Pict people. Almost being this like backwater swamp creatures in a way. as they're getting completely ran over by the Romans, and Bron Morn is there to defy the Romans and stuff. That would be probably my biggest inspiration for the Argia, in that the Yeti, Sasquatch, Bigfoot, coupled with how the Pict are seen in Bron Morn, and you smash them together, and then you have this, like, what happened to these these humanoid creatures that that are just forgotten, so to say. And that is a question that may or may not have an answer as the story goes along. But that is that. So we'll like I mentioned before when I started up, about an hour and a half or so. I don't want to be too lengthy in these. That way people can enjoy them on their free time. Plus, it's a Saturday brunch kind of thing. So thank you for joining, and whatnot. Hopefully I can learn how to read better. But I've already getting the like I said before, early on, it is nice and warm and fuzzy, and I'm very happy that I was able to write this. You could just have the little short story be the little vote, and then just be done with it, which wouldn't work at all because it misses all the stuff I want to tell. But like that alone, kind of, it was nice to do that. It was nice not to, especially for anybody who's read through Sudrava and stuff, and it's just like, man, this is really rough. Like that, this is nice and comfy. So it was nice to get some of that. I mean, I know people have heard like running slower than molasses and stuff, but I don't know. There's just, it's nice to have that in there. A little bit of, you got to mix in a little bit of silliness with seriousness. So, but thank you for joining along. Yeah, and I will read. Actually, yeah, what would that be a good thing to figure out? It might be chapters 3, 4, and 5 next week. I would probably hinge on it being that. Go through and start reading chapters 3, 4, and 5 because that's about the same amount, a few more pages than what I did today. So I might be able to sneak in chapter 6. It's dependent, especially because I took about a half an hour just to kind of start. Yeah, so thank you. Thank you for part 1 of reading through Saedra's Calling. I hope you enjoyed, and sorry I couldn't read better. Can't even read my own story. This is proof that I could never do the audiobook straight up because no, it is just not. Yeah, until next time. Yeah, so yeah. I will put up the thing for it, but February 22nd, 10 a.m. Grab a biscotti and a cup of coffee and join me. And have a good rest of the weekend, day, weekend, weeknight, and everything in between. Glad you enjoyed it. I appreciate you all stopping in there. And I know who you are, JT. Love you, Mom. Thanks for popping in. All right.